to you the fifth installment of my book entitled, Sir, We Found Your Dog. Section 2, Chapter 2, Preschool. Looking back, it seems that each time Wendy and I moved, we had a child. After our wedding, we moved for a few months into a large older home at 101 East Pearl Street. This house, when purchased by the congregation, had been remodeled and served as a church building until the church's growth forced plans for expansion. My father, who had led the congregation before me, purchased the former Methodist church building located at Broadway and Brewer Streets. It had been vacated when the Methodists built a new facility on Madison Avenue just north of the center of Greenwood. Left with this vacant building on Pearl Street, my parents worked to refashion it into a livable space for our family, and for a short time my mom, dad, my three sisters, my brother, and I lived in it. I still have fond memories of that building because it was there that I received salvation, and now where our first son, Todd, was conceived. It was such a monstrosity for a young couple that I pledged to sell it the first opportunity. Indeed, I'd accepted the invitation to be the pastor of this congregation conditioned on two events happening. Number one, that someone would be saved the very first service I preached, and number two, that this huge house would sell. The congregation had offered it on the market for $14,000, but no one seemed interested. The first Sunday I preached, March the 28th, 1971, two people were saved. Debbie Hobbs, who later became my secretary, and Bruce Waters. Within a week, Frank Davis, a neighbor, came over and offered us $20,000 for the house. So we moved. We moved into a tiny one-room apartment in the church that has served as the former pastor's office, but it imposed many unusual conditions upon us. We look back on these fondly because we had to go down the hall to the bathroom. Todd was born while we lived there, and Trent was conceived there. From this one-room apartment, we moved into a half of a double that the church purchased that was 2 doors west of the church on Broadway. We used both sides of this double. Our family lived on the west side, and I lived on the east side in my office, making it convenient for me to share in parenting and caring for our infant sons. By now, Wendy was deeply involved in school at Franklin College, trying to complete her undergraduate degree. I had promised her parents, on condition of their permission to marry her, that I would pay for her final 2 years of college and for her degree. One afternoon, Wendy came home earlier than usual to find a strange sight. Trent had messed his diapers pretty thoroughly, and I decided the best way to clean him up was to hold him up by his arms in the kitchen sink. I made sure the water was tepid and was in the process of hosing him off with a sprayer when Wendy stepped through the door. She did not approve, and I found this method to be quite effective, however. I never used it again because of the ruckus Wendy raised, but later, upon reflection, I realized it was not one of my brightest ideas because it was there that we washed the dishes and did some food preparation. Trent was quite skilled with his toys, and he loved to play with K'NEX and Legos. He spent hours assembling and disassembling these pieces, and I swear he could build or make just about anything his mind could imagine. He was very, very creative, and Wendy often said he had raccoon hands. He loved to draw and demonstrated a knack for detail, dimension, and perspective that were uncommon for his age. Once, he was asked to draw a picture depicting the fall season. While others drew trees with many colored leaves hanging on them, Trent drew barren trees with the leaves all lying on the ground. Another occasion, Wendy wanted to see if he could count to 100, so she scattered 2 rolls of pennies on the floor, and as she watched, he counted them out aloud and accurately up to 100, and then looked up at her and said, "Do you need me to count any more?" This was before he was enrolled in kindergarten or first grade. Another sweet memory was his love to dress up. He begged Wendy to make him capes to wear, a Batman cape, a Superman cape, and he also wanted a cowboy outfit. Every day, almost without exception, he would be bouncing around the house, jumping from pieces of furniture to one of these capes flapping behind him. Abundant energy. He was rarely ill, but one day after lunch he complained he was suffering from a bad heart. Within seconds, he vomited all over the floor. As Mother saw it. I did go back to school when Trent was about 8 months old. I was really torn up about leaving him and Todd. My first semester back to school, I tried to get classes that didn't start until 10 a.m. or so. This way, many days, I could still rock him to sleep for his nap. This gave me some fulfillment, but I still worried about the boys when I left. Steve had a different set of lenses he looked through as far as childcare. On one occasion, I came home to what looked like a very tiny old man. Steve had shaved the tops of their heads so they looked like they were bald with just a fringe of long hair around the edges. It was pretty funny, but later we competed that summer with a buzz job all over their heads. Because I was transfer student into Franklin College, I had to play a little game of catch-up with the methods classes I needed to take before student teaching in the fall of 1977. I took 21 hours of credits, and if one knows anything about attending college, one would know 12 to 15 credits is about average. But we all made it. After the school year was over, we took a little vacation to Mackinac Island and around Lake Superior. Trent was about 20 months now and starting to talk. Todd was a very diligent 4-year-old big brother who decided he was going to teach Trent to talk. Trent actually came home from the trip talking a lot more. Thanks, Todd. On Mackinac Island, we, Steve and I, decided to rent bikes and ride around the entire perimeter. About half of the way, Sir Trent was in the child seat behind me, leaning forward, and proceeded to take a long, nice nap for the rest of the ride. Todd and Steve rode merrily along in their tandem, but Todd's feet barely touched the pedals. I have to admit, Trent had a bully side to him as a small child. Once at Carter's Outlet, he went into a play area, and about 10 to 15 minutes later, a woman came up to me to tell me about how my little boy was being mean to her little boy. I checked out and escorted young Sir Trent to the car, offering many stern words of admonition along the way. I'll hope you look up this book, Sir, We Found Your Dog, on Amazon. It will be there soon.